AEC Economic Community was established in 2015. This embraces the 630 million consumers in the ASEAN 10 countries, the average age of which is less than 30 years old. So there are more than 300 million digital native consumers across these 10 countries, and with a combined GDP of $2.5 trillion. And the majority of these 10 ASEAN countries have been growing at 5% plus for at least the last 3 years. So that's the AEC. We were going to expand and have what was called the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but the United States at the last minute decided to withdraw from that. So instead of 12 countries, it became 11 countries without the United States. You can see the 11 remaining people there. And they renamed it the Comprehensive Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. And these 11 countries, they between them have 500 million consumers, as you can see. It's about 15% of world trade. That would have been 40% almost if the US was still involved. And that was ratified last year. So this is in effect from 2019. And this means that these 11 countries effectively trade freely between and amongst the other 10 countries in the group. And we're seeing substantial growth, particularly in Vietnam, as a result of the ratification of this agreement. So that's the CPTPP. The first one was the AEC, and the third one is the RCEP. The RCEP is a real powerhouse. This takes the 10 ASEAN economies and adds 6 more onto them. So it's 16 countries, the ASEAN plus 6. The extra 6 are the giants of China and India. The North Asia powerhouse is Japan, Korea, and then plus Australia and New Zealand. So these 16 countries between them is more than half the world's population. Just in that map there, more than half the world's population. $25 trillion of GDP, more than 40% of the global economy. This agreement is not yet finalized. It's under discussion. The target was to complete the discussions last year. They've now moved that target to having the discussion completed this year. And then to get it fully ratified by all the partners is probably another year or so. So we could look at this potentially coming into effect in 2021, just a couple of years from now. In fact, what that will mean is amongst these 16 nations, more than half the world's population will be able to trade freely between and amongst themselves. And then we have another huge one, also on the discussion board. This is the FTAAP. It's the Free Trade Area of the Asia Pacific. And this is the free trade agreement directly correlated to the APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Community, which has 21 economies as its members. And you can see it's both sides of the Pacific. This one includes the United States. So of the ones I've gone through before, this is the first one to include the United States. It's not clear when this will get finalized. It's probably at least another 2 or 3 years in the discussion. But you can see the proportion of GDP, trade, and the world's population that is involved in this FTAAP. So as and when it gets underway, it will certainly supersede the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, because most of those participants are participants in here. And it could also supersede the need for the RCEP agreement, which is led by the Asian economies and excludes the Western United States and Canada, and the South American economies. So it'd be very interesting to see how this plays out relative to the RCEP, which is the Asia regional one, that is at a further advanced stage of discussion and notification. So that was 4. Then we have 2 mega initiatives exclusively led by Beijing. So we have the Belt and Road Initiative. That was first announced in 2013 at a summit in Jakarta by Xi Jinping. And quite significant that he announced it at the largest country within the ASEAN 10. So the Belt and Road Initiative is China's initiative to help fund infrastructure investment across the Eurasian continent, and indeed stretching the tentacles further into North Africa, into the South Asia continent, and to leverage infrastructure investment for the benefit of economic growth and, of course, for trade, and therefore trade in goods, and therefore freight flows. They estimate this embraces almost 2/3 of the world's population and around 40% of the world's GDP. And so far, in the 5, 6 years it's been going, it's attracted $460 billion of investment. It's backed by a specific bank that was set up, the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, again led by China. And this is enabling infrastructure initiatives across the Eurasian continent that many of those economies without this initiative would never be able to aspire to. So this is opening up the whole Eurasian continent, in fact, recreating, resurrecting what was the Silk Road. The irony of this is that the road in the Belt and Road is actually the maritime route, and the belt in the Belt and Road is the land-based route. And then we had another major initiative launched by Beijing very recently, announced in 2018, early 2018, and just last month the master plan was published. This is the GBA. It's the Greater Bay Area. And this initiative is to pull together the combined strengths of 11 major cities in South China, being the special administrative region of Hong Kong, plus the special region of Macau, plus 9 cities in Guangdong province, including Shenzhen and Guangzhou, of course. And you could see here, again, it has a large catchment area, 66 million population, $2 trillion GDP. The powerhouse economies amongst the 11 are Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Hong Kong, and Macau. And the idea is to create an integrated economic and business hub along the lines of the Tokyo Bay Area or the New York, New Jersey Bay Area. The challenge with this one, you're under one legal jurisdiction. This Greater Bay Area involves 3 different jurisdictions. That's the jurisdiction of mainland China, and then under the one country, 2 systems, the Hong Kong system, which is a different currency, a different legal environment, a different education system, drives on a different side of the road, and Macau, which is also a different jurisdiction from a legal currency and tax perspective. So the complications here must not be underestimated. But at the same time, when we think back to the business that we're involved in, amongst those Greater Bay Area cities, there are 70 million containers moved every year through the ports within that Greater Bay Area. 70 million containers. So as a combined integrated economic and business hub, it also has this additional layer of going to be a major conurbation of freight, logistics and transport, both air freight and sea freight. And also within the region to serve the 66 million consumers there. So that was the smorgasbord of 6 major trade initiatives that are underway in this Asian century.